My name is Ryan Gregg. I'm a principal program manager on the OneDrive and SharePoint team, and this is how to integrate OneDrive and SharePoint files, collaboration, and sharing using Microsoft Graph into your application. It didn't all fit into the title constraints that I had, so I apologize for that. If you've been paying attention at Ignite, you've probably seen this slide already, which is really all about how we think about how SharePoint and OneDrive connect the workplace with intelligent ways to manage your content and your intranets. And there's a lot of really great things that other people have talked about, and I'm not going to bore anybody in here with those details. But if you notice in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, it talks about extending and developing OneDrive and SharePoint. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So hopefully, as I look across the room, raise your hand if you're a developer. If you write code. No? Okay, raise your hand if you're an architect for IT solutions. Okay, cool. So this is a 300-level talk, so I'm going to be writing code and showing Visual Studio and stuff like that. So if that bores you, please don't leave. Just tune out. No, just kidding. So what OneDrive is sort of all up is the experience that we have around letting you share and work on your files together. And we don't just mean files that live in a container named OneDrive, but we really mean files that live across the Office 365 ecosystem. Using the OneDrive applications, using the OneDrive website, you can get to your files from any device, both personal files and work files. You can share those files with anybody inside and outside your organization. And we have all sorts of protection in place to provide enterprise-grade security on top of those files. The really great thing that's not on this slide is that the developer story across OneDrive and SharePoint is also unified, just like the rest of our experiences. So you don't have to think about, oh, I want to build something for SharePoint, oh, I want to build something for OneDrive. We make it easy. If the files are in Office 365, Microsoft Graph and the OneDrive developer platform are the story. Oh, I love those animations. That was so cool. We're also part of the Office 365 platform. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can extend the Office applications and the Office experience. You can extend documents, conversations, pages, SharePoint sites as well. And you can also build your own standalone web apps and device apps that integrate with data that's held in Office 365 using the Microsoft Graph. And the OneDrive API experience is actually one of the original founding members of Microsoft Graph. And we've been there to ensure that the Microsoft Graph story is complete and covers all of the files experiences that you might want to build using our technology. So what are the benefits of building a solution that integrates with OneDrive? And I'm going to say OneDrive over and over and over again, but I really mean OneDrive and SharePoint and Office 365 and all of that, but that's just too much for me to repeat every single time I want to mention that. So just when I say OneDrive, think the rest of the world. Billions and billions of files are stored in OneDrive and SharePoint today, and users put their files there for lots of reasons. But the key benefits that we see are really robust sharing and collaboration, including between organizations, really rich experience around previewing and thumbnails for those files. As you heard, we now support over 270 different document types to be able to give you a rich preview in the user experience. There's also the enterprise-grade security and compliance features and the seamless experience across all of our endpoints. And now, for a developer, you can tap into all of this existing ecosystem with your own content and have access to all of the same thumbnails and previews that we have available for our apps. The same auditing and compliance features that are built into Office 365 are available when you put your data into the OneDrive/SharePoint experience. And if you do it right, you can actually maintain the user experience across the user's entire workday. So there are ways that you can hook into the SharePoint ecosystem. There are ways that you can hook into the OneDrive application experience to maintain this consistent user experience as long as the content is stored in those services. And we'll show you more of those details. And I have a partner as well that I'm going to bring up on stage to talk about how they've managed to do that. And then by building on top of the OneDrive platform, it really helps you focus on what matters in your app. So building a cloud file storage solution is hard. Trust me, we know. We do that every single day. You shouldn't have to do that on your own. You should be able to rely on all of the work that we put into making sure that our files platform is great so that you can focus on doing what you want to do with your content and doing what you want to do with your application and not worrying about those problems. The other big advantage for you is that by putting your content into Office 365, you can start leveraging the Office 365 insights that are powered by Microsoft Graph. You can start contributing to the recent files list, the files that are trending around a user, and you can draw insights back out of the Microsoft Graph using the Graph APIs. When I think about the OneDrive platform, I kind of break it down into 4 areas. And if you've seen my talk before, or you were here last year, you'll notice there's a 4th area now that wasn't there before. The first area is connecting with file pickers. This is the simplest way to bring your application and connect it to the OneDrive ecosystem. The second is sort of the next logical step, which is to leverage our API to go deeper into that integration and to access more of the functionality that's available inside the OneDrive platform. The third piece is all about embedding your experience into OneDrive, so actually being able to take your application and bring it in front of users inside OneDrive. And the great part about that is that if it doesn't matter anymore if a user is using OneDrive as their primary experience for accessing your content, or if they're using your application as the primary experience, or if they're switching back and forth between them, you get a nice seamless user experience for them. And then the new one that I'm going to talk about today is being able to extend files with custom data. And this has to do with some new improvements that we've made with the Graph API and SharePoint to be able to start augmenting the data that's in our ecosystem with additional metadata. But let's start at the very beginning, connecting with file pickers. Like I said, this is the simplest and first thing that you should do when you think about how can I bring the files that are in OneDrive into my app, or how can I take the files in my app and bring them into OneDrive. Think of this, if you're familiar with Win32 development, as the common file dialog for the web. It's a simple way with no UI coding to be able to get the OneDrive experience directly in your application and make it really easy for users to be able to find that file, not just in OneDrive, but across the entire Office 365 ecosystem and open it inside your application. We actually use this internally inside our own apps as well, so it's not just a thing we've built for all of you in this room, but we use it for all of our own experiences, like the Word, Excel, and PowerPoint web applications, and the SharePoint page editor, the new SharePoint page editor. So it's a really simple way to bring files into your application. How simple? So this is literally all the code that you have to write to be able to open a file from a JavaScript web app and do something with it. And to prove to you that that's really all it takes, and because I like to get to demos quickly, let's do a quick demo showing what this looks like. So here I am in VS Code. The screenshot should look really familiar. I have some JavaScript written out with a reference to the OneDrive JavaScript file, which I can bring in, and then this function that I had written out on that slide that says open new file, and I create an options instance, and it says, I need a GUID. Well, I know how to go create one of those, which is I go to apps.dev.microsoft.com. I sign in with my account. I go to my organization's sign-in page. I type in my password. Okay, so now I'm in the new Microsoft Developer portal for being able to register an application. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new app and type in an app name. We'll call this Ignite Session. And I'm going to not go through the guided setup because I know what I'm doing here, and just click Create. And what this is going to do is it's going to go out to my Azure Active Directory and provision a new application for me. At least it should. Yeah, there we go. Provision a new application registration in my Azure Active Directory with this new application ID. And because we're using the V2 AAD platform here, I actually don't have to go through and mess around with what permissions I want. I can dynamically ask for permissions on the fly. And in fact, the SDK that we offer to enable the file picker does that for you. So in this case, I just have to add the platform that I want, which is a web platform. And I'm going to run this off my local machine, so I'm just going to say localhost port 9999, hit save. And now I have an application that I can use to use the file picker. So I'll copy this GUID, drop it into where it says need GUID here. And you'll see the action that I want to do in this case is I want to download the contents of that file. I could ask for a sharing link to that file if I want to be able to share it via email or via a different action. I can also ask for the action to be query, in which case I get back all of the Microsoft Graph metadata for that item. And then I can go off into the Microsoft Graph API and perform much richer actions. And then upon success, I get back a collection of files that the user selected, and I'm just going to open that in my editor. So now I'm going to launch I'm going to launch IIS from my local machine on port 9999, and I'm going to go out here and go to port 9999. And here's the existing application that I already had, which is basically just Notepad for the web. It's just a simple text editor as an example. And I'm going to click the Open button, and this is going to invoke that JavaScript that I just wrote. And you'll see the AAD login screen appeared. I didn't have to mess with AAD auth. I didn't have to think about what OAuth was. I didn't have to go download any libraries. I just dropped that app GUID in there, and our SDK took care of everything for me. So I'll pick the user that I'm signed in as. And because this is the first time I've used the application, I need to consent to this application having access to my contents, or the contents of my OneDrive and my SharePoint. So I'm going to go ahead and click Accept. And you'll see now that the OneDrive UI is going to load and allow me to browse to all of the files. And so this is the contents of my OneDrive account. You can see all the files I have access to here. But you can also see my groups and my team sites that are available over here. So I'm going to click on Team Vroom. And here are the different document libraries that are existing inside this team site. I'm going to click on Documents. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on this sample file. And this now just downloaded the contents of that file into my JavaScript app, and I rendered it in a text area. So really simply, with only a few lines of code on top of an existing application, I now have access to the billions of files that are stored in Office 365 with no UI coding, no work on my side, and just the ability to take a content URL, download the content of it, and stick it into my app. We think this is a really powerful way to get started on your application, and you can do the same thing in reverse if you want to. If you have content that you want to be able to save back into a SharePoint team site or a OneDrive, you can do the same flow, but just call save instead of open, and we'll do the reverse for you. A really simple, quick way to get started doing this stuff. This sample is actually out there on GitHub. If you go to the URL that's on here, or if you just go to dev.onedrive.com, you can find all of the samples from today. Okay, so that's cool. That's the really simple, easy thing that you can do in no time. But now what if you want to do something richer? What if you want to actually really, truly integrate the files experience into your application? Or you want to handle really large files. We support up to 15 gigabyte files now in SharePoint and OneDrive. What if you want to upload one of those? Or what if you want to deal with permissions or handle sort of more advanced scenarios? So now we offer the Microsoft Graph, or the OneDrive API in Microsoft Graph, which gives you the full flexibility to do everything that we do. It's actually the same API under the covers that does most of the work inside our actual native experiences. It even does things like power the thumbnails that you see in files on demand if you haven't realized those files in your hard drive. All of that's powered by the same API that we're making available to you. So it's not a world of, hey, there's a third-party API that's sort of a second-class citizen, or third-class citizen. It's really, truly the API that we're using to enable those rich experiences on our side. There's a couple new things, though, that we have done since last Ignite that I want to highlight. One of which is probably something that no doubt somebody in this room, or hopefully several of you in this room, have talked to me about numerous times on Stack Overflow, which is, hey, app-delegated authentication doesn't quite work. And you're right, we had it available in preview before, and there were a couple scenarios that didn't work, but I'm happy to stand here today and say app-delegated authentication is now fully supported across the Microsoft Graph API for files. You can do things like upload really big files, download really big files, get to thumbnails, all of the things that you want to be able to do, and I'll show you a demo of that. We also have version history available now. So for the first time in Microsoft Graph, you can see the full set of versions that we have maintained for a particular file. And in OneDrive for Business and SharePoint, that's actually every version of the file, which is great. And then there's also the new activity API. So if you saw the demos earlier in the week that highlighted the new activity functionality in OneDrive, that API is also available on a very limited preview today to actually show you that that really is the API that we're using to build these scenarios in our own applications as well. In addition to using the API, you can actually use it to do more with files. So like I said, we support 270 formats for being able to get thumbnails and previews. You can have access to those files when they're stored in OneDrive or SharePoint from our API. So if you want to get a 2,000 pixel thumbnail for Adobe Illustrator file now, you can go do that, and we make it really simple. You can also use the Excel Workbook API to manipulate the contents of an Excel workbook. So if you want to populate an Excel spreadsheet with a set of data, you don't have to do that offline anymore. You can now use the REST API and Microsoft Graph to do all of that. And you can also even do some format conversions. So for a set of files that we understand how to convert into PDF, you can do that on the fly and download that file in the format that you understand instead of the native format. The other thing that, as I said at the very beginning, was that the API is the same across all of Office 365 when we're talking about files. Obviously, there has to be some difference, though, because I have to be able to say, hey, I want the OneDrive files, or I want the SharePoint files, or I want the group files. So the way Microsoft Graph is designed is as an OData API, which if you don't know what OData is, don't worry about it, because it acts just like a REST API. But it's neat because it allows us to have objects that we can reuse across the API surface. And so if you want to access somebody's OneDrive, you just say me drive. If you want to get to a SharePoint team site, you can now address the SharePoint site in Microsoft Graph by saying sites and then some identifier for that site, which can either be the host name and the site GUID and the web GUID, or it can be a URL to the site, or it can be sort of any identifier that you know about a SharePoint site. And then you can enumerate the drives within. You can also do this for Office 365 groups as well. So if you want to identify the group, or after you have identified a group, rather, you can then call the drive property on that. And then once you're in a drive namespace, everything is the same across all of these different services. So the way you get thumbnails is the same, the way that you do enumeration is the same, and it all works really well. So I like to sort of get nerdy for a second and go play with the API in a way that no end user actually would. But we've made it really easy now. So there's this wonderful thing called Graph Explorer, which if you go to graph.microsoft.com and click on Graph Explorer, this actually allows you to interact with the API in a very easy and straightforward way. And the best part is you don't even have to be signed into an account. We have a test tenant that is hooked up to the Graph Explorer that lets you make these API calls directly, or you can sign into your own account and do it. I'm actually not going to use Graph Explorer today, though, and I'm going to use Postman instead for one simple reason. If you want to do thumbnail downloads or you want to do file downloads, the Graph Explorer kind of doesn't handle that because it's designed to return JSON. And I want to show you what thumbnails and things like that look like, so I'm going to do it here. So to make a request to Microsoft Graph for a drive, in this case me drive, I need an auth token, which I got ahead of time. And I can click send, and you'll see here's the results back. It's my drive. We've identified the user using the AAD object IDs, and you can see in this case it's a OneDrive for business because drive type equals business. I can do the basic things like drive, root, children, have access to all of the files that are in the root folder of my drive. I can also, like I was saying, so let's go look at the groups that are defined in this tenant, and I'm going to select one that has content in it. Oh, display name. And I'm going to grab the team vroom group because that was the one I showed you earlier. And I'm going to do groups, groups.id, and then I'm going to access its drive. And you'll see in this case, I get back the same sort of metadata that I was getting before. I can see who last modified the group, the name of, who last modified the drive, the name of the drive. In this case, I see that it's actually a document library, not a OneDrive, because it's the files that back an Office 365 group, and as you know, that's a SharePoint site and a regular document library that live behind that. You can also see, though, that the owner for this particular library isn't a user or an application, but it's actually a new thing that we've added, which is group. And we return you the GUID for the group, the email address for the group, and then the display name for the group, or the alias for the group. So you can actually sort of know now that this document library belongs to a group instead of belonging to a user or anything else. And just like before, I can do root to get the root folder. I can do children to have access to the content inside. Everything seamlessly works the same. And if I want to get to a SharePoint site, I can do sites. In this case, I'm going to do the root site, which is just the standard root site for a SharePoint default site collection. And then I'm going to do drives on top of this one. And this is going to bring back a collection of the document libraries that are in this root site. And you'll see things like the app packages library come back, all of the sort of document libraries that you would expect to see that are existing in a SharePoint site, as well as the ones that have been created by the users of that site. So you have full access to everything that you would want to have access to inside a SharePoint site from the Graph API. In addition to that, let's talk about thumbnails. So I'm going to go back to my drive, and I'm going to use another feature that Microsoft Graph has, which is, it's probably too small for you guys to see, unfortunately, but there's a root : /. And what the colon lets me do is translate between the API namespace using the API objects and the namespace within an object. So we know that drive root is the root folder for my OneDrive. if I want to navigate within that space, instead of doing some crazy complicated collection of children calls, I can use the colon to translate into that namespace. And I'm going to go to R media project / blueprints xk top-down.ai. And I'm going to make this request, and you'll see here's all the metadata about that file that's actually inside a folder. But I didn't have to know what the ID of that folder was or do any sort of crazy navigation. I can just go straight there. And then I can ask for the thumbnails collection, and I'm going to ask for the first thumbnail. And these are the thumbnail URLs that enable this experience to work. And so if I click on one of these and make this request, you'll see here's actually the thumbnail for that Illustrator file. So without needing to understand how to decode Illustrator files or how any of that works, I can now have access to a rich preview of what that file looks like and actually have that experience inside my application. I'm going to do one more, which I think is fun, which I'm going to go to the medical folder, and I'm going to grab my foot. And I'm going to click on this, and you can see this is a DICOM medical imaging file. And we showed you that these previews work as well. This is actually my foot X-ray from when I broke my toe. And you can take dynamic image or DICOM imaging files, have no clue how to decode those DICOM image files at all, but you can consume that content inside your application and have a rich experience around those files because OneDrive enables that for you. Of course, it works for Word and Excel, or for Word and PowerPoint, and the files that we know how to render as well. So it works on all of the things that you'd want to have access to. Let's talk about versions for a second. So I'm going to go back to the root of my drive, and I'm going to go, this time I'm going to address things slightly differently. So I'm going to do children, the children collection inside my drive, and then I'm going to say example.md. So this is a markdown file. And then in this case, I actually need to change the version of graph that I'm talking to the beta endpoint because the version support is only in beta today. And if I do a get on versions, you'll see here are the versions of this file that exist. So there's version 7.0, which was modified by me, and it was 600 bytes. And if I scroll back down a little bit further, you'll see version 2 was only 593 bytes, and version 1 was 407. And I can actually address a particular version if I want to get more information. And I can restore this version if I want to make this the latest version. So if you want to add the ability to, inside your application, to understand versions and to be able to promote an old version back up to be the current version, or to download the contents of a previous version of the file, you can now do all of that using the Graph API. And this worked even though it didn't return anything. You'll see status 204, no content. When you restore a version, it becomes the latest version of that file, and the 204 in this case indicates that that was successful. Some other things that people like to do in the API that I just want to show real quickly are share files. So again, I'm going to take this example.markdown file, and I'm going to share it. So I'm going to call create link, and again, I do a post, and I'm going to go in here and say I want the type of link to be a view link, and I want the scope of that link to be organization. And what this says is go create a view-only link that's scoped to members of the same organization. And I'm going to hit send. Oh, organization? No. What? Oh, yeah, that's right. This should be JSON, not text. And you'll see the Graph API went out, and it created me a new sharing link. And something else I want to highlight here, these are actually the new format of sharing link that we're returning from my tenant, so they're significantly shorter. I think they're half the length of what sharing URLs used to look like from SharePoint. And those are rolling out soon, as Omar said earlier today. So all of that same functionality, everything that's enabled inside our own native clients is also available from inside the Graph API, and you can get to all of that same content this way. Now, when you think about how the sync client works and how it's able to replicate all of the data back onto your Windows box, and with files on demand, it needs to be able to build that metadata store without actually realizing the files. How does that work? That's actually using the Delta API that we make available. And so if I call the Delta API with no parameters, what you'll actually see here is a feed of every single file that's inside my OneDrive, or at least the first page of that data. And so what Delta lets you do is really accurately have a fully replicated copy of the data available inside your application. So you call Delta with no parameters the first time, and we will stream down all of the contents of a user's OneDrive so that you can maintain that state. And then we'll return back to you this delta link at the top. And what this delta link is the next API call that you can make when you want to understand what changed. And so if I save this URL off, and you'll see if I make a call to it right now, nothing's there. Nothing has changed from the last time I made this call. But if I go to my OneDrive now, and I change a file, so in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new, let's say a Word doc, and type something in it, and wait for it to save. All right, it's saved. Now I'm going to go back to Postman, and you'll see if I make the same call again, now I have an indication that something changed. So the first thing that I see is that the root folder changed, which is because something inside the OneDrive changed, and we propagate those changes all the way back up so that you always know how deep in the hierarchy something goes and that the change dates of all the folders above that hierarchy are the same. But the second thing you'll see here is document.docx, which was created in this case. And so the Delta feed gives you this ability to, without pulling, without enumerating all of the contents of the drive, actually be able to just quickly pull back the changes that have happened in the drive since the last time you knew. And this integrates really well with the webhooks functionality as well, to let you be able to receive a push notification when something changes, then call the Delta API and actually deterministically get the list of everything that has changed since the last time that you were interfacing with OneDrive. So one more little thing I want to show while we're deep into the API space here. There's a couple insights that are, I think, really interesting that are available through Microsoft Graph as well. So you can do me drive recent. And I switched back to here because I don't have recent stuff in the account I was using before, but this sample account does. And so recent is the same list of files that's available in the OneDrive recent list. So you can see all of the files that a user has interacted with. And my favorite little anecdote about this is that Outlook added a functionality when you attach a file that has the list of recent files there. And when they did that, just by taking this data feed and making it available in the UI, attaching went to like 1 click in 80% of the cases. So it really sped up the way that users access their files and have this great experience inside their apps. The other thing that you can do, an insight that you can access here, is the shared with me asset, shared with me, which returns a list of all of the shared files and shared folders that this user has access to, or that have been shared with this user. So you can get access to not just the files that live inside somebody's drive, or a group, or a site, but actually the files that have been shared with a user as well, if you want to make those available inside the application. Okay, so that is a really deep dive into what our API makes available really quickly. So that's sort of phase 2. Let's say you've built all of that into your application. You have a really rich experience being able to consume and integrate with files that are stored in OneDrive and SharePoint. Now what do you do? So you've put all your great content into OneDrive, and the user clicks on that, and they get this wonderful prompt from the browser that says, I don't know what to do with that file, that custom proprietary file type that you've put in here, .awesome. Let's download it and figure out what to do with it on the local client. That's not a great experience. That doesn't solve the sort of seamless end-to-end experience that I was talking about at the very beginning. And it's bad from another perspective, which is it's now created a copy of this file outside of the cloud that isn't being tracked, it doesn't have the same audit trail, doesn't work the same way that files inside the cloud did. And if the user makes changes to this file, they have to figure out how to upload that change back into OneDrive so that it's shared with everybody who had access to this file. So we sat there and said, oh no, like what can we do to make this a better experience for people who build applications on top of OneDrive and SharePoint? And so the solution to this is being able to embed your own experience inside the OneDrive through something that we call file handlers. And so this file handlers v2.0, which is generally available today, I'm happy to announce, actually lets you bring your application experience inside OneDrive. You can enable your custom app functionality today inside the OneDrive experience and sort of make it available across the entire workday. So if they're using your application or your line of business experience, they can have access to all of the actions there. If they're using OneDrive as the primary interface, they can have access to the same actions. You can also create the rendering experience that we have in OneDrive. So you can enable new preview and open actions on top of your files. So if you have a custom reporting format that you have created and you want to store in OneDrive, when the user clicks on that, they'll get a rich preview inside OneDrive showing what that report looks like. If they want to open it and interact with it, we can launch your application in the web browser and let them do that. And all of this is powered by the Microsoft Graph API. So again, the same API story that makes everything else that I've talked about available is available here as well. In developing this, we worked really closely with Adobe and Adobe Acrobat over the last couple of years, actually, to help bring the OneDrive experience inside all of the Document Cloud experiences. And file handlers have really allowed Adobe customers to seamlessly use Document Cloud from inside the OneDrive app, and will continue, especially in the future. So OneDrive and Adobe have really worked together to provide this great PDF cloud experience. And I want to invite Jonathan Herbach from Adobe up on stage to go through what they have built and talk to you about how file handlers have improved the user experience for them. So Jonathan?
Thanks.
I'll get this set up for you.
Cool, thanks. Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about some of the integration work that we've done between the Adobe Document Cloud and OneDrive, Office 365, and beyond. I work on the Document Cloud product management team. We work on Acrobat, PDF services, and Adobe Sign. And we're working really closely with Ryan and Microsoft more broadly to build solutions that are going to benefit our joint customers. Adobe and Microsoft have a strategic alliance, and it's designed to increase workforce productivity and drive more efficient business processes. And a key part of that is these embedded experiences. Delivering great experiences to our end users through tightly coupled web-based experiences is really a concrete step to reinvent productivity and engage with our business users. If I look at Adobe and PDF, we introduced it almost 25 years ago today. And while it's been a great experience for Adobe, a great commercial success, I think more importantly is that it's an ISO industry standard. It's embraced by businesses and consumers around the world. And whether it's within Office 365 or beyond, we know that there are billions and billions of PDFs out there, useful for secure document exchange, collaboration, communication, and digital transformation. And the key message and the demonstrations that we're going to do in a moment are that together with Microsoft, the Adobe Document Cloud does more to enable modern productivity for PDFs. So Office 365 and Document Cloud can do more together. As I look at what we've done recently, we integrated across the OneDrive, SharePoint, and OneDrive consumer experience integrations that allow Acrobat and Reader to natively open, create, and save documents to the cloud. And with over 1 billion machines enabled with this and a number of customers using it, many customers have been thrilled with this result. That's an integration that we believe is a key part of building modern productivity and delivering great experiences. Looking at our expanded partnership and our strategic alliance with Microsoft, we offer also comprehensive sign integrations. Whether it's within SharePoint, Office 365, or Dynamics, we ensure that these integrations allow users to work on documents and deliver value faster and more safely. And this integrated experience today with file handlers gives embedded experience a seamless experience for our users. It's great for end users. It's great for corporations. And I'd love to show you that in a moment. Finally, though, we're also building on all these integrations to deliver new AI innovations based upon PDF to deliver more insights and value to our customers. So if I look at the file handler experience, we think that this lets us do more as a developer, lets us do more for our customers as well. And I think about the sort of 3 broad audiences for file handlers and thinking through who raised their hands earlier today as developers, as IT architects and administrators, And of course, all of us together are end users. File handlers let each of us benefit. For developers, it's a really simple and integrated experience. You can quickly and easily build integrations that offer great experiences for enterprise IT. Things that stay in the cloud, that maintain that file history, that security, all those sort of benefits that IT loves is certainly great. But as developers, we at Adobe have seen, of course, that great integrations accelerate mutual active use. Great integrations go further. And that's ultimately what end users love. A simple, seamless experience with minimal deployment, all based upon an integrated web environment with Office 365. So looking specifically at what we've done within Document Cloud and Office 365, these are not based upon new technologies from Adobe. The Adobe Web solutions for Acrobat are not new. For several years, we've had the ability for end users to create, collaborate, and review PDFs in the cloud. But offering that embedded experience directly from within OneDrive, where users can start and end their experience, directly from within SharePoint, directly across Office 365, having that bridge is a much better experience for our users. So let me quickly illustrate that concept and show how Document Cloud and Microsoft can do more for modern productivity. So if we look within Office 365, here we have the OneDrive experience. You'll see this in a demo in a moment, but conceptually we have a new file format, PDF. And with that file format, we want to allow users to open documents within the Adobe Document Cloud. Similarly within SharePoint. So if a user starts within the OneDrive or SharePoint experience, they can click on the document. They're signed into Office 365. They're brought in a new tab to the Adobe Document Cloud experience. They're still authenticated there. They can see a preview of the document, and they can directly edit, make modifications, or use Adobe services from within that experience. Here we have something called Organized Pages. You can go ahead, make a very common experience changes to PDFs. Now, it's a really straightforward concept. User makes changes to the document, click Save, and the document is saved back to Office 365. Similarly, beyond opening documents as a file format, we offer direct access experiences, actions. Think of these as verbs. If you want to directly send a document out for review, make changes to a document, combine multiple documents together, these actions can be done directly from within OneDrive and SharePoint. Again, straightforward concept, simple integrated experience, works end to end. So before I hop into a demo, let me set a little bit of context. If we think about if you want to flip over, yeah. Thanks. If you think about how end users often work within OneDrive or SharePoint, you have a company, perhaps. We are not going to use Contoso today. I've seen a lot of demos with Contoso, the running store. We're going to shift gears, look a little bit more industrial at a company called Raiden Sama. Raiden Sama builds electrical equipment. They use contract manufacturers to build their materials. They then send them out directly to their customers. Now, in this first demo, we're going to show Raiden Sama, an employee who needs to take an existing PDF and make changes to it. Here we go. Okay, so here within OneDrive or SharePoint, I can click into PDF, and again, we have this new Open in Adobe Document Cloud experience. A second tab opens. The file is brought across the cloud to allow us to preview the document and make changes. Pretty straightforward experience. And this is something that is quite common. One customer that I work with is a municipality. And all the time they have to take existing PDFs and make changes to aggregate content, share it out for review in some form. Whether they're in the field, like a police officer, or directly within the office, having a web-based experience where you can start the experience, open a document, let's click Organized Pages here, and make changes to this is really straightforward. So here I'm going to go through, maybe delete a couple pages that aren't relevant for this presentation I'm building, maybe move this around a little bit, take what folks in the Bay Area may recognize is simply an electrical supply material, commonly known as Sutro Tower, and save this new document directly back to OneDrive. So straightforward experience, we create the new document, it's going to then appear back within OneDrive. Easy for end users, minimal deployment. In fact, no deployment is necessary for end users. And refresh, and we have a new document here. Simple experience. Let's go this one step further and talk about actions. These are verbs that we can, as a developer, expose directly within File Handler. I can go ahead and have a context-sensitive menu. Let's actually switch this way. So under this new Actions menu, I can go ahead and run a number of services that we've exposed from the Document Cloud directly within the experience. I could go ahead and take an existing Word document, and I could choose to create a PDF from it. Not just creating a PDF, but adding a password, watermarking, doing more with PDFs in Document Cloud. Or, in this context, let's take multiple files together, and we'll see dynamically that a different action appears. Combine pages. Similar sort of experience. A new tab opens. All those documents are brought into the Document Cloud. If it's not a PDF, we convert it to a PDF. We make changes right here, and we'll quickly generate a new document that can be sent out. Straightforward experience. Easy as a developer to build this, and better for end users to use. So file handlers are really easy for end users, are straightforward for developers to deploy, and as an end user, let's just quickly refresh. Here we have this new combined file. Things that were not historically possible are easy for us and can be easy for you too. So I think we're really thrilled with the experience here. This is just the beginning for us with embedded experiences. We see this as a great way to deliver more value over time to our customer base, and was something great to throw together closely with Microsoft. This is going to be coming out for general release from Adobe later this fall, based upon the GA version of file handlers. And after the session today, I'm happy to talk about our experiences as a developer, as well as if you have questions about Document Cloud and perhaps trialing our new integrated experience, happy to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate Jonathan having worked with us over the last many years, actually, on all of the integrations with OneDrive and SharePoint that Adobe has done. And they've been an amazing partner helping us really prove out the file handler's experience and tweak different aspects of the experience to make sure that everything works really great. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight in Jonathan's integration that may have been obvious to everyone, but you'll see like the PDFs now, because the file handler has been installed, have the Adobe icon on them as well. So there's a branding aspect that comes in along with file handlers, as well as just the functionality aspect, where you can actually bring your brand into these experiences. But how hard is this to actually build? As Jonathan said, they've had this existing web functionality around for a while, and it was fairly straightforward for them to be able to integrate into the experience. So file handlers really work as a very simple contract. You register your application just like you do for any of the integrations within OneDrive or SharePoint, using Azure Active Directory to create an application. And then you add some additional metadata into that application registration that indicates you are a file handler and what the types of files that you want to add your actions to are. And then you give us a simple URL for where we should send all of the information about the files that the user has selected when the user chooses your action. And then on the other end, you just need to implement the receiver for that URL. So we will post just a regular HTTP post message over to your application. And in this case, the code that I have on screen is a simple file handler that I have written based off of that, off of that Markdown Notepad example that I showed at the very beginning, which brings that experience in line into the OneDrive web app. And so I implemented 3 different actions. I implemented a new file action, and this is just a ASP.NET MVC app. So these are my controller, functions inside my controller. They require authorization because I need to have a user account to be able to access content out of OneDrive. And then for all 3 of these, so new, preview, and open, there's a set of activation parameters that come in as that form request that I hydrate into an object. And then I return back a view that is sort of the model that I build up for how my app works. So there's not a whole lot of custom integration I have to do. I just have to receive this post, grab the URL for the Microsoft Graph API that points to the file or files that were selected, and then hand that off to the existing rendering experience that I have built. And if I switch back to my OneDrive account, oh, I don't have that. All right. I will switch to my OneDrive, and I will show you what this looks like. So here I am in OneDrive, and I can click on New, and you'll see Markdown document is available, and there's a custom icon that I've provided for Markdown. And when I invoke this, what happens is OneDrive behind the scenes creates a 0-byte placeholder file, and then sends the Microsoft Graph URL for that file over to my application. And now I have the full API capabilities of Microsoft Graph available to me. So I can do things like easily store content back into OneDrive. So I'm just going to type some hello ignite. I'm going to hit save. And you'll see I can make an API call. The site says the save changes. Everything works. I can also do things like rename the file. Like mdfile3.md isn't a very clever name. I'm going to say hello ignite and hit save. And now what this is doing is actually using Microsoft Graph to patch the file name to be helloignite.md using the full capabilities that I have in Microsoft Graph. And if I want to get really crazy and enable sharing functionality like we want you to from inside your native app experience, I can click get a link, and this will actually use the Microsoft Graph to go create a sharing link for this document, which I can copy and paste and use to access the file. And then when I close this, if I come back here, I should see helloignite.md is available. So that was the new file experience. If I click on this, though, you'll see the second part of our experience, which is preview, which is basically inside the OneDrive experience. You'll see the URL at the top of the screen is still sharepoint.com. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still within the OneDrive app. I can still navigate back and forth between files that are available inside my drive using the OneDrive Chrome. But here is the preview that is actually rendered by my app. So there's a way to embed your app into our experience. And then I can click open with the file handler sample code. And in this case, it does what we had seen with the Adobe app as well, which is we create a new tab. We've now handed off the browser to your application, and so we've transitioned out of OneDrive into your app, and now you can have the full capability to do everything that you want to do from here. Again, with the same API access that you've had before. So all it starts with is the same types of integrations that you have built before, using Microsoft Graph, using Azure Active Directory to register your app. All of the same concepts that we've built on so far through this talk. But now you can integrate that with your existing application in a short period of time and have this seamless flow back and forth between your application and the OneDrive experience on the web, which makes everything really, really smooth for your users. So file handlers are generally available today. I'm happy to announce that we have exited first release, and we are now available across all of the SharePoint tenants. So this functionality is available to everybody, and you can start building your file handler applications today. This lets you really bring your application fully into the OneDrive experience and provide a really great seamless end-to-end flow for your customers and our customers. You can, in addition to handling those actions for your proprietary types, as the document cloud integration showed, you can actually add verbs to any file. And those verbs are made available across the OneDrive and the SharePoint experience today, and across more of Office 365 in the future. And as just to call back to Jonathan, the Adobe Document Cloud integration is shipping later this fall. So we're really excited to see that come about, and we can't wait to see what we do next with Adobe. So that's the end of phase 3 of my talk, and this used to be where my talk ended. But now we have something else to talk about this time around, which I'm pretty happy about, which is being able to extend files with custom data. Very blank slide, don't you think? But what if you wanted to be able to store additional data on files in the cloud? What if you have things like a customer record locator that you want to be able to tag onto your file? How would you be able to do that sort of thing? Or what if you had additional metadata that you wanted to make visible inside a SharePoint document library? What if you wanted to take advantage of SharePoint content types and custom columns and all of that that was not available in Microsoft Graph? What would you do? Well, guess what? Now they are. Hooray! So I'm happy to announce today the Lists API has become generally available on the v1.0 endpoint in Microsoft Graph. And so what the Lists API lets you have access to is all of the content of SharePoint lists via Microsoft Graph. So you can enumerate the lists that are available within a team site or a group. You can enumerate all of the columns and the list items within a list. But the really cool thing that the List API also lets you do if you're a classic SharePoint developer is that document libraries are under the covers just lists, or maybe not even under the covers. And in Microsoft Graph, we made it really easy to go back and forth between thinking of a file as a drive item, or sort of a file, and thinking of it as a list item. So you can seamlessly move back and forth between the API depending on how you think about addressing the files or what your scenario is. The List API also gives you the ability to now create your own custom document libraries. So in the past, you were stuck using the drives, like the OneDrive and the document libraries that were already there through Microsoft Graph. And you had to fall back to calling a SharePoint REST API if you wanted to actually go provision something new. No longer. Now you can do that via the v1.0 endpoint. So what does this look like? Well, it's pretty obvious, I think, if you understand how Microsoft Graph works at this point, but there's a sites collection that you can use to address a site inside Microsoft Graph that used to just have the drives collection off of it so that you could find drives using the Drive API. Now we have the lists collection, which lets you enumerate and address lists inside that SharePoint site. So you can use this by posting to the lists collection to create document libraries. Within a list, you can post to the columns collection to be able to add columns into the SharePoint list. You can also enumerate them. You can set the fields on list items. You can do it all. So what would a cool demo for how we might be able to do something neat here look like? So we had this concept that has been floating around of like, hey, Azure Functions are really neat, and it's a really great way to connect from webhooks and changes into your Azure Function to be able to respond to changes to files in real time. So how could we plumb all of that together and take advantage of the List API? And what we ended up building was this cool app, which I will launch here, called the OneDrive Data Robot. And what the OneDrive Data Robot is going to do is take advantage of the entire platform that we have available. So it's going to use the Delta API to understand what changes are happening inside a document library. It's going to use webhooks to be able to get real-time notifications when files are dropped into that library so that we can do actions on them. It's actually going to use the file picker experience that we had at the very beginning to let you select where you want the robot to run. And it's going to use Azure Functions and the Cognitive Services APIs to do some transformations based on the file content that we discover. And then it's going to use the List API to write back the results of those transformations into additional custom columns that we have created in the document library. And because I like living dangerously, this is all code that's going to run off of my laptop here. So we'll see what happens. So inside this solution in Visual Studio 2017, I have two components. I have one component called the OneDrive Data Robot, which is a website that lets me interact with the data robot and connect it into the document library that I want to work with. I have a second piece, which is I'm really happy to be able to author now in Visual Studio using the Visual Studio 2017 Azure Functions extension, so I can write an Azure function in Visual Studio instead of writing it in my web browser using the CSX editor. And that also has the really great advantage of being able to compile my Azure function and upload it directly, so it's not being interpreted or compiled on demand. The other cool thing that this does is I actually have a simulator so that I can run everything locally. And then one other little piece that I will make sure is still running back here is because we're using web services, and obviously this computer is behind a firewall for the conference here, it doesn't have an IP address that's directly routable, so I'm using the ngrok service to be able to have a publicly addressable endpoint for my webhook that will still come to my dev box here. So when I hit run, what's going to happen here is it's going to build everything. And it's going to launch the Azure Function Simulator. There's the wonderful Azure Function logo. And then it's going to launch my web browser onto my local app. So this is an ASP.NET MVC app that follows the same format as a bunch of the other examples that we've had. And I'm going to sign into it using my Azure, or sign in using the Azure portal to get me access. Oh, all right, let's try this in an in-private window instead so it doesn't pick up the wrong account. I'm going to sign in. And so I'm signed in as my Ryan account. And I want to start watching a document library. So behind the scenes, the application is now invoking the OneDrive file picker and making me log in again. Sorry about that. And so I can see all of the different document libraries. So here's my OneDrive again. I'm going to go to the team Vroom directory. And this time I'm going to pick the audio files document library, which real quick, just to show you that I'm not lying about anything, I'm going to go load so you can see what it looks like. So this is just a plain vanilla document library. You'll see it doesn't have any special columns in it. It doesn't have any files in it or anything right now. So I'm going to pick this. I'm going to say that's the one that I want to save to. And this is, if the demo gods will be willing, this will actually go somewhere. If not, then I'm going to switch to my backup. All right, so that didn't work. Well, let's try this one more time. I'm going to sign in. I'm going to sign in as me. All right, so I'm going to click Start Watching a Document Library again, in a different web browser this time. I'm going to pick my same team site all over again. And I'm going to hit save. Yes, it worked. OK. So now what it has done is it has called back into my ASP.NET solution and said, hey, we need to go provision the document library that was just selected using the file picker. We get a drive ID back from the file picker that we can use to go target that thing. And so we're going to make a request and make sure it's actually a document library because we can't go create custom columns inside OneDrive. At that point, we then go and say, hey, we want to add 2 new custom columns. We want to add a language custom column and a transcription custom column. That might be a giveaway about what the rest of this demo is going to be. And I'm going to go run that and actually go execute this request against Graph. And what Graph is going to do is go create those new custom columns inside that document library. And everything is great. So I now have provisioned my document library with a couple extra custom columns using the Microsoft Graph API. The next step that's going to happen is it's going to go create a webhook so that I can find out when files have been uploaded and changed into this document library using the Microsoft Graph webhook notifications. And if I go back to the ingrok page, you'll see, hey, there's this incoming post to a webhook URL called _API audio transcribe. And if I go look at the code, you'll see I got a webhook was triggered. This webhook is actually the validation webhook that Microsoft Graph sends. Oh, when I took too long. The Microsoft Graph sends to make sure that the endpoint is valid. So I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to talk less. When you create a new subscription via Microsoft Graph, it goes out and hits your webhook endpoint to make sure that it's a valid URL. This demo. To make sure it's a valid URL that has a service that actually expects to be hit by a webhook. We don't want you to be able to leverage our service as a way to DOS somebody else's website by signing up for a bunch of different subscriptions. So if your website doesn't respond within a particular period of time, then it doesn't work. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to hit F5 a bunch of times. And we'll get the webhook created. Yay, OK. So now the webhook was created. Everything is good. You see the robot has been activated. I'm now going to log in into that site again. Oh, not via that URL, though. Into this URL. And you'll see now that if I click on audio files, you'll see now there's 2 new custom columns that have been added to the default view, the language column and the transcription column. And I'm going to go out and grab some sample audio files that I have, and I'm going to drop these into this folder. I'm going to start with the easy one, which is the English one. And what's going to happen is the OneDrive website is going to upload this file via the regular APIs. You'll see my webhook just got triggered because OneDrive identified that that file changed. Via Graph fired me this webhook. I'm then going to go call the Delta API and say, hey, tell me what changed in this drive. I want to know what the new files are. And we're going to identify correctly, if you go back here and look, that logistics.en-us.wave was changed. That was the file that got created. Now using the Cognitive Services APIs, we're going to grab the content of that audio file, hand it off to Cognitive Services and say, create a transcription of this file for me. And we're going to get back the transcription of the audio text from Cognitive Services. And when we run this, it's now going to post that data into, I'm just going to turn off my breakpoint so this keeps running. It's going to post that data back into SharePoint using the list API to update it. And if I hit refresh, you'll see here, it identified that the language of this file was English, and it identified the transcription. And I don't have audio hooked up, so I can't play the file, but it's pretty cool. And using Cognitive Services, this obviously works for more than just English as well, so I'm going to take a couple other files and drop them in here. And you'll see we're uploading them. You'll see my webhook activity starts to do things. And so now it's running these other files through Cognitive Services as well, generating transcriptions for them in their native language. And it's going to post back all of that data via the Microsoft Graph. And if I hit refresh, oh, that's fine. If I hit refresh here, you'll see Spanish and Korean and the transcriptions for those languages as well. This demo may have come together in like the last week, so sorry for a little bit of the rough edges, but I think it's really cool and we wanted to show it off. So that's the end of sort of my pillars of what the OneDrive platform is. So there are now 4 pillars that we use when we think of how apps should be integrated into OneDrive. From very easy, simple integrations that progress all the way to very deep integrations, taking advantage of all of the custom data that can be stored in SharePoint. Hey, that was cool. The things that I really want to capitalize on is there really is one API across Office 365, not just for files, but for really all of the different types of content that you want to get to, and that's Microsoft Graph. Within Microsoft Graph, you can easily get to files across OneDrive Personal, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint, Groups, Teams. All of the different ways that files are stored are available via Microsoft Graph today. And the OneDrive platform really, through things like file handlers and this deep integration with SharePoint custom content, really lets you unify your application experience and the experience that a user has inside OneDrive. So it's this seamless experience for your users across their entire workday, where if they're using the OneDrive app, if they're using your app, everything works the way that you expect. And there's a lot of advantages by having your content stored inside OneDrive. You get to take advantage of the enterprise-grade security and auditing features, the geolocation features that we have. All of the greatness that powers the OneDrive experience for user files can power that same experience for your application as well. And to get started on all of this, if you go out and visit our new developer portal on dev.onedrive.com, we've refreshed all of our content to talk about what's new and to make it really easy to get started building these applications. And then one other highlight that I want to talk about is community is really important to us. And supporting the developers who are working on this stuff is really important to me. And I spend a strangely large amount of my day, hours a day, taking a look at Stack Overflow, taking a look at GitHub, taking a look at our user voice, and making sure that we understand the problems that you guys are running into, and that we are doing everything that we can to address any issues that come up or just to help you when you have questions. And we're happy to do that in Stack Overflow because that means that when we answer those questions or when the community answers those questions, it's feedback to make sure that other people who have the same question can get the same answer. And it helps us just know where we need to go invest more to be able to make the next set of advances on all of this stuff. So please, if there's something that's missing that you want to have added to the platform, come to user voice and post it or vote it up. If you have questions about how the API works, come to our GitHub and download our samples and take a look at what we have. And if you have a technical problem or you can't figure something out, come to Stack Overflow, tag it OneDrive, and myself or any members of our engineering team will be out there answering your questions to make sure that you guys have a great experience building on our platform. There's a lot of ways to learn more about all of this stuff. Obviously, come to dev.onedrive.com to get started, and please check out the other graph sessions. You missed it already, but this morning, if you didn't go, was a great session by Yina, just covering an overview of the whole Microsoft Graph ecosystem. Please go back and watch that on demand if you haven't watched it already, because it'll highlight a bunch of other great things that you can do inside the Microsoft Graph. And then there's two other sort of ways to get involved. There's a virtual hackathon that we're running right now. That has something like $40,000 in prizes, so it might actually be worth it to go participate in that experience. And there's the Office 365 Developer Bootcamp, which can help you get up and running on all of this stuff. There's also, if you haven't been over to the Hyatt, there's an immersion room that has a bunch of hands-on labs, and there are 2 hands-on labs for this stuff. There's one on using the Graph API in general, and there's one on building a file handler that you can actually use to walk through all of the details of what I showed today. As always, please evaluate the session, help me know how to improve this talk and make it more relevant for you in the future, or what I can do better, because I always want to be improving how I can deliver our message to you. So thank you very much. I have about 9 minutes left for questions that I'm happy to take, and thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Am I first? Hi, I have a question. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
That was a good talk, Ryan. Thank you. So on deltas, you can do that. You can do that for if you're an admin, you can do that for your users, right? Any user.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you do it by date?
You want to be able to get the feed by date?
Sync the delta between 2 dates. Yeah.
You can't do that. It's always from a point in time reference that you have forward. And so you can either
user
say
voice then is where I need to go.
Yeah, yeah. if that's something you really want, yes, please go to user voice and ask for it. But that's
yeah,
not the way it works today.
Then the second thing was, so on the thumbnail previews of files that's available, is that similar to where you can in SharePoint you can hover or click on a Word doc and you can see the actual dialog that comes up and opens up the doc and shows you inside it, and you can actually.
So what we have today for thumbnails is basically the first page of multi-page documents.
But it'll open it up and show you that.
So you can get in any resolution you want whatever the first page of something looks like.
Nice.
If you want to be able to get to other pages, please come to user voice and let us know.
No, that's really good. Is that you showed? I think there are several sizes, right? As far
That's
as
right. So there's 3 sizes that we return by default: small, medium, and large.
Okay.
But you can actually ask for any size that you want. There's a parameter that you can specify, and we don't guarantee that we return you something exactly that size, but something as close to it as we feel like we can give you.
And the last thing on that is it all 200 plus formats that you mentioned in there that would be supported for that?
Anything we can generate a thumbnail for,
okay.
You can also get a high-res thumbnail for.
Very quick question.
Yeah.
Will you have this available ever for SharePoint on-premise?
Yes. Actually, last year, I didn't talk about it this year, but some subset of the functionality that we talked about is available in SharePoint 2016 Feature Pack 1, which is actually sort of old news now, I guess. And we'll be continuing to bring more of the functionality as we can into future SharePoint releases as well.
Right. It's always, but in that case, Graph is always, through Microsoft Online, and
That's
that,
right.
accesses.
So there's actually a paper on dev.onedrive.com that explains the difference between how to call Graph and how to call SharePoint 2016.
Okay.
So the API is 98% the same. There's a few differences, and there's certainly a set of functionality that isn't available on-prem, but the general functionality is there.
Okay. Fair enough. The one thing, when you go to graphmicrosoft.com, when you try to go and play with the APIs, I guess the ones that are actually on beta, they're not all documented there. So I guess that, sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because when you try to get lists and other things, it's not all documented there. I kind of hagged my way around to find what it was. Okay, but eventually, just an FYI.
Yeah, no, that's really good to know. It should be, so sorry about that.
Really good to know everything in one place. So my question is, now SharePoint is under the umbrella OneDrive. It's great. Other services of Office 365, I know Yammer now files are stored within SharePoint, so that's kind of indirectly covered. But Planner and other services, is there anything on the roadmap?
Those are great questions. There's nothing sort of formally on the roadmap to talk about yet. But you can see things like with Microsoft Teams, instead of inventing a different place to store files, it's all powered by Office 365 groups and all available via the same APIs that we make available for this. So it's certainly, you know, we are the platform for files in Office 365, and not necessarily all of the workloads have switched to that yet, but it's definitely the direction that new stuff goes. Yep. Cool. All right. Another question? I won't leave yet.
It was just at the session about hybrid, where you can access with stuff from Graph.
That is a great question.
Also generate the thumbnails.
Yeah, so hybrid support is not currently planned as part of our roadmap, largely because we haven't heard demand for Microsoft Graph to connect to hybrid. If you are interested in that scenario, please let me know. I think you just did. And please come to user voice and create it if it's not already there and vote on it, because like we really are making these prioritization decisions based on what we're hearing from the developer audience. And if you have customers that are in a hybrid environment that would use Microsoft Graph, we want to know about that, and then
But
we'll
for
go with
hybrid,
that.
it will be rolled up to search and Delve, right? Or not Delve, only search.
It depends on how IT configures the hybrid environment, but
Okay.
that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, one over here. All right.
I have a question about custom Adobe actions that were added to command bar of document library. So is it a command set extension that was released for SharePoint, or it's some kind of another engine that adds these buttons to the command bar?
Yeah, so what Adobe did is actually using the file handler platform to add those actions into OneDrive. And the way that we think about that is that file handler actions are available across the breadth of Office 365 where file handlers make sense. So where you can take over the entire experience for a particular document type, like in this case .pdf, file handler actions are the way to go. Command set extensions are really great when you want to add specific functionality to a list or to a site, something that's very scoped as opposed to a document class across the entire board.
Is there some kind of schema where I can provide like top action and then submenu for my additional actions, or?
So within file handlers, we manage all of that for you. So you populate a set of actions, and there's some basic criteria that determine whether or not those actions show up based on what's selected. And then we have logic that handles how those are rolled up. So if there's one action visible to the user, it shows up on the toolbar like Jonathan showed you with combined files. If there are multiple actions available, then there's a drop-down actions menu that has the actions under it. If this thing became really popular and there were lots of apps adding lots of extensions, then we actually add a third submenu to say actions and then the name of the app that has added those actions and then the list of actions for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate you all coming.